Bezalel, Oliab, and all the other craftsmen whom the Lord has given skill and understanding, who know how to make everything needed to build the sacred tent, are to make everything that just as the Lord has commanded. The people bring many gifts. Moses called Bezalel, Oliab, and all the other skilled men to whom the Lord had given ability and who were willing to help. And Moses told them to start working. They received from him all the offerings which the Israelites had brought for constructing the sacred tent. But the people of Israel continued to bring Moses their offerings every morning. Then the skilled men who were doing the work went and reported to Moses, "The people are bringing more than is needed for the work which the Lord commanded to be done." So Moses sent a command throughout the camp that no one was to make any further contribution for the sacred tent. So the people did not bring any more. What had already been bought was more than enough to finish all the work. Making the tent of the Lord's presence, the most skilled men among those doing the work made the tent of the Lord's presence. They made it out of 10 pieces of fine linen, woven with blue, purple, and red wool, and embroidered with figures of winged creatures. Each piece was the same size, 12 meters long and 2 meters wide. They sewed 5 of them together in one set and did the same with the other 5. They made loops of blue cloth on the edge of the outside piece in each set. They put 50 loops on the first piece of the first set and 50 loops matching them on the last piece of the second set. They made 50 gold hooks with which to join the 2 sets into one piece. Then they made a cover for the tent of 11 pieces of cloth made out of goat's hair. They made them all the same size, 13 meters long and 2 meters wide. They sewed 5 of them together in one set and the other 6 in another set. They put 50 loops on the edge of the last piece and on one set and 50 loops on the edge of the other set. They made 50 bronze hooks to join the 2 sets as to form one cover. They made 2 more coverings, one of ram's skin dyed red and the other of fine leather, to serve as an outer cover. They made upright frames of acacia wood for the tent. Each frame was 4 meters tall and 66 centimeters wide, with 2 matching projections so that the frames could be joined together. All the frames had these projections. They made 20 frames from the south side and 40 silver bases to go under them, 2 bases under each frame to hold its 2 projections. They made 20 frames for the north side of the tent and 40 silver bases, 2 under each frame. For the back of the tent on the west, they made 6 frames and 2 frames for the corners. These corner frames were joined at the bottom and connected all the way to the top. The 2 frames that formed the 2 corners were made this way. So there were 8 frames and 16 silver bases, 2 under each frame. They made 15 crossbars of acacia wood, 5 for the frames on one side of the tent, 5 for the frames on the other side, and 5 for the frames on the west end at the back. The middle crossbar set halfway up the frames extended from one end of the tent to the other. They covered the frames with gold and fitted them with the gold rings to hold the crossbars, which were also covered with gold. They made a curtain of fine linen, woven with blue, purple, and red wool, and embroidered it with figures of winged creatures. They made 4 posts of acacia wood to hold the curtain, covered them with gold, and fitted them with gold hooks. Then they made 4 silver bases to hold the posts. For the entrance of the tent they made a curtain of fine linen, woven with blue, purple, and red wool, and decorated with embroidery. For this curtain they made 5 posts fitted with hooks, covered their tops and their rods with gold, and made 5 bronze bases for the posts. Making the covenant box. Bezalel made the covenant box out of acacia wood, 110 centimeters long and 66 centimeters wide and 66 centimeters high. He covered it with pure gold inside and out, and put a gold border around it. He made 4 carrying rings of gold for it, and attached them to its 4 feet, with 2 rings on each side. He made carrying poles of acacia wood, covered them with gold, and put them through the rings on each side of the box. He made a lid of pure gold, 110 centimeters long and 66 centimeters wide. He made 2 winged creatures of hammered gold, one for each end of the lid. He made them so that they formed one piece with the lid. The winged creatures faced each other across the lid, and their outspread wings covered it. Making the table for bread offered to God. He made the table out of acacia wood, 88 centimeters long and 44 centimeters wide and 66 centimeters high. He covered it with pure gold and put a gold border around it. He made a rim 75 millimeters wide round it and put a gold border round the rim. He made 4 carrying rings of gold for it and put them at the 4 corners where the legs were. The rings to hold the poles for carrying the table were placed near the rim. He made the poles of acacia wood and covered them with gold. He made the dishes of pure gold for the table, and the plates, the cups, the jars, and the bowls to be used for wine offering. Making the lampstand. He made the lampstand of pure gold. He made its base and its shaft of hammered gold. Its decorative flowers, including buds and petals, formed one piece with it. 6 branches extended from its sides, 3 from each side. Each of the 6 branches had 3 decorative flowers, shaped like almond blossoms with buds and petals. The shaft of the lampstand had 4 decorative flowers, shaped like almond blossoms with buds and petals. There was 1 bud below each of the 3 pairs of branches. The buds, the branches, and the lampstand were a single piece of pure hammered gold. He made 7 lamps for the lampstand, and he made its tongs and trays of pure gold. He used 35 kilograms of pure gold to make the lampstand and all its equipment. Making the altar for burning incense. He made an altar out of acacia wood for burning incense. It was square, 45 centimeters long and 45 centimeters wide, and it was 90 centimeters high. Its projections at the 4 corners formed one piece with it. He covered its tops, all 4 sides, and its projections with pure gold, and put a gold border round it. He made 2 gold carrying rings for it, and attached them below the border on the 2 sides, to hold the poles with which it was to be carried. He made the poles of acacia wood and covered them with gold. Making the anointing oil and the incense. He also made the sacred anointing oil and the pure, sweet-smelling incense mixed like perfume. Making the altar for burning offerings. For burning offerings he made an altar out of acacia wood. It was square, 2.2 meters long and 2.2 meters wide, and it was 1.3 meters high. He made the projections at the top of the 4 corners, so that they formed one piece with the altar. He covered it all with bronze. He also made all the equipment for the altar: the pans, the shovels, the bowls, the hooks, and the fire pans. All this equipment was made of bronze. He made a bronze grating and put it under the rim of the altar, so that it reached halfway up the altar. He made 4 carrying rings and put them on the 4 corners. He made carrying poles of acacia wood, covered them with bronze, and put them in the rings on each side of the altar. The altar was made of boards and was hollow. Making the bronze basin, he made the bronze basin and its bronze base out of the mirrors belonging to the women who served at the entrance of the tent of the Lord's presence, the enclosure of the tent of the Lord's presence. For the tent of the Lord's presence, he made the enclosure out of fine linen curtains. On the south side, the curtains were 44 meters long, supported by 20 bronze posts in 20 bronze bases, with hooks and rods made of silver. The enclosure was the same on the north side. On the west side, there were curtains 22 meters long, with 10 posts and 10 bases, and with hooks and rods made of silver. On the east side, there were the entrance. The enclosure was also 22 meters wide. On each side of the entrance, there were 6.6 meters of curtains, with 3 posts and 3 bases. All the curtains round the enclosure were made of fine linen. The bases for the posts were made of bronze, and the hooks, the rods, the covering of the tops of the posts were made of silver. All the posts round the enclosure were connected with silver rods. The curtain for the entrance of the enclosure was made of fine linen, woven with blue, purple, and red wool, and decorated with embroidery. It was 9 meters long and 2 meters high. Like the curtains of the enclosure, it was supported by 4 posts in 4 bronze bases. Their hooks, the covering of their tops, and their rods were made of silver. All the pegs for the tent and for the surrounding enclosure was made of bronze. Metals used in the tent of the Lord's presence. Here is a list of the amounts of metals used in the tent of the Lord's presence. When the 2 stone tablets were kept on which the 10 commandments were written, the list was ordered by Moses and made by the Levites, who worked under the direction of Ithamar, son of Aaron the priest. Bezalel and the son of Uri and grandson of Hur from the tribe of Judah made everything that the Lord had commanded. His helper Holiab, son of Hisamach from the tribe of Dan, was an engraver, a designer, and a weaver of fine linen and of blue, purple, and red wool. All the gold that had been dedicated to the Lord for the sacred tent weighed 1,000 kilograms, weighed according to the official standard. The silver from the census of the community weighed 3,430 kilograms, weighed according to the official standard. This amount equal to the total paid by all persons enrolled in the census, each one paying the required amount, weighed according to the official standard. There were 603,550 men 20 years old or older enrolled in the census. Of the silver, 3,400 kilograms were used to make the 100 bases for the sacred tent and for the curtain, 34 kilograms for each base. With the remaining 30 kilograms of gold of silver, Bezalel made the rods, the hooks for the posts, and the covering for their tops. The bronze which was dedicated to the Lord amounted to 2,480 and 25 kilograms. With it he made the bases for the entrance of the tent of the Lord's presence, the bronze altar with its bronze grating, all the equipment for the altar, the bases for the surrounding enclosure and for the entrance of the enclosure, and all the pegs for the tent and the surrounding enclosure. Making the garments for the priests. With the blue, purple, and red wool they made magnificent garments, which the priests were to wear when they served in the holy place. They made the priestly garments for Aaron, and the Lord had commanded Moses. They made the ephod of fine linen, blue, purple, and red wool, and gold thread. They hammered out sheets of gold and cut them into thin strips to be worked into the fine linen and into the blue, purple, and red wool. They made 2 shoulder straps for the ephod and attached them to its sides so that it could be fastened. The finely woven belt made of the same materials was attached to the ephod so as to form one piece with it, as the Lord had commanded Moses. They prepared the carnelians and mounted them in gold settings. They were skillfully engraved with the names of the 12 sons of Jacob. They put them on the shoulder straps of the ephod to represent the 12 tribes of Israel, just as the Lord had commanded Moses. Making the breastpiece. They made the breastpiece of the same materials as the ephod and with similar embroidery. It was square and folded double, 22 centimeters long and 22 centimeters wide. They mounted 4 rows of precious stones on it. In the first row they mounted a ruby, a topaz, and a garnet. In the second row an emerald, a sapphire, and a diamond. In the third row a turquoise, an agate, and amethyst. And in the fourth row a beryl, a carnelian, and a jasper. These were mounted in gold settings. Each of the 12 stones had engraved on it the name of one of the sons of Jacob, in order to represent the 12 tribes of Israel. For the breastpiece they made chains of pure gold, twisted like cords. They made 2 gold settings and 2 gold rings, and attached the 2 rings to the upper corners of the breastpiece. They fastened the 2 gold cords to the 2 rings, and they fastened the other 2 ends of the cords to the 2 settings, and in this way attached them in front to the shoulder straps of the ephod. They made 2 rings of gold and attached them to the lower corners of the breastpiece, on the inside edge next to the ephod. They made more gold rings and attached them to the lower part of the front of the 2 shoulder straps of the ephod, near the seam and above the finely woven belt, just as the Lord had commanded Moses. They tied the rings of the breastpiece to the rings of the ephod with a blue cord, so that the breastpiece rested above the belt and did not come loose. Making the other priestly garments. The robe that goes under the ephod was made entirely of blue wool. The whole of the head was reinforced with a woven binding to keep it from tearing. All round its lower hem they put pomegranates of fine linen and of blue, purple, and red wool, alternating with bells of blue gold, pure gold, just as the Lord had commanded Moses. They made the shirts for Aaron and his sons, and the turban, the caps, the linen shorts, and the sash of fine linen, of blue, purple, and red wool, decorated with embroidery, as the Lord had commanded Moses. They made the ornament, the sacred sign of dedication, out of pure gold, and they engraved on it, dedicated to the Lord. They tied it to the front of the turban with a blue cord, just as the Lord had commanded Moses. The completion of the work. all the work on the tent of the Lord's presence was finally completed, the Israelites made everything just as the Lord had commanded Moses. They brought to Moses the tent and all its equipment, its hooks, its frames, its crossbars, its posts, and its bases, the covering of the ram's skin dyed red, the covering of fine leather, the curtain, the covenant box containing the stone tablets, its poles and its lid, the table and all its equipment, and the bread offered to God, the lampstand of pure gold, its lamps and all its equipment, and the oil for the lamps, the gold altar, the anointing oil, the sweet-smelling incense, the curtain of the entrance of the tent, the bronze altar with its bronze grating, its poles and all its equipment, the wash basin and its base, the curtains for the enclosure and its posts and bases, the curtain for the entrance of the enclosure and its ropes, the pegs for the tent and all the equipment to be used in the tent, and the magnificent garments the priests were to wear in the holy place, the sacred clothes of Aaron and the priests and for his sons. The Israelites had done all the work just as the Lord had commanded Moses. Moses examined everything and saw that they had made it all just as the Lord had commanded. So Moses blessed them. Setting up and dedicating the tent of the Lord's presence. The Lord said to Moses, "On the first day of the first month, set up the tent of the Lord's presence. Place it in the covenant box containing the 10 commandments and put the curtain in front of it. Bring in the table and place the equipment on it. Also bring in the lampstand and set up the lamps on it. Put the gold altar for the burning incense in front of the covenant box and hang the curtain at the entrance of the tent. Put in front of the tent the altar for burning offerings. Put the wash basin between the tent and the altar and fill it with water. Put up the surrounding enclosure and hang the curtain at its entrance. Then dedicate the tent and all its equipment by anointing it with sacred oil, and it will be holy. Next, dedicate the altar and all its equipment by anointing it, and it will be completely holy. Also dedicate the wash basin and its base in the same way. Bring Aaron and his sons to the entrance of the tent and tell them to take a ritual bath. Dress Aaron in the priestly garments, anoint him, and in this way consecrate him, so that he can serve me as priest. Bring his sons and put the shirts on them. Then anoint them just as you anointed their father, so that they can serve me as priests. This anointing will make them priests for all time to come." Moses did everything just as the Lord had commanded. So on the first day of the first month of the second year after they left Egypt, the tent of the Lord's presence was set up. Moses put down its bases, set up its frames, attached its crossbars, and put up its posts. He spread out the covering over the tent and put the outer covering over it, just as the Lord had commanded. Then he took the 2 stone tablets and put them in the covenant box. He put the poles in the rings of the box and put the lid on it. Then he put the box in the tent and hung up the curtain. In this way he screened off the covenant box, just as the Lord had commanded. He put the table in the tent on the north side outside the curtain and placed on it the bread offered to the Lord, just as the Lord had commanded. He put the lampstand in the tent on the south side opposite the table, and there in the Lord's presence he lit the lamps, just as the Lord had commanded. He put the gold altar in the tent in front of the curtain and burnt the sweet smelling incense, just as the Lord had commanded. He hung the curtain at the entrance of the tent, and there in front of the curtain he placed the altar for burning offerings. On it he sacrificed the burnt offering and grain offering, just as the Lord had commanded. He put the wash basin between the tent and the altar and filled it with water. Moses, Aaron, and his sons washed their hands and feet there. Whenever they went into the tent or to the altar, just as the Lord had commanded, Moses set up the enclosure round the tent and the altar and hung the curtain at the entrance of the enclosure. So he finished all the work. The cloud over the tent of the Lord's presence. Then the cloud covered the tent, and the dazzling light of the Lord's presence filled it. Because of this, Moses could not go into the tent. The Israelites moved their camp to another place only when the cloud lifted from the tent. As long as the cloud stayed there, they did not move their camp. During all their wanderings, they could see the cloud of the Lord's presence over the tent during the day and a fire burning above it during the night.